Hello and welcome to the first in a couple of videos about how to use LoggerPro in the physics class. What you see here is the window that you would have when you open the program. A couple of quick notes. I am using version 3.8 and I'm using it on a Macintosh. So if you have a different version or if you're working on a PC, it's going to look a little different, but it'll function in exactly the same way. The first thing that I want to do is format this data set and graph window so that the labels are not X and Y, since I don't know what those mean. LoggerPro is a pretty intuitive program to use. If you want to change something on it by formatting, double click on it. So we'll start with X and double click there. And it brings up this manual column options dialog box where we can enter in names and declare the units for that. Suppose we did an investigation looking at how the length of a string affected the period of a pendulum. My independent variable in this case would be the length of the string, so that's what I want to put in here for the name, and I'll type in length. If I hit the tab key, it takes me to the short name text box, which I'll just put in L. Seems like a good short name for length. I'll hit tab again and put in the units. I'm going to say meters, so just type in an M. That's the symbol for a meter, and I'm done. So I click on the done button. I notice now that in my data set, the column head is in length in meters, and on the axis of the graph, it's labeled in length also. So now I'll do the same thing for Y. Period of the pendulum, capital T is the symbol for that, and seconds, so S for the unit. And now the data table and the graph window are properly formatted. At this point, I just need to enter some data. So I'm going to click in the first cell beneath length. I'm going to type in my first length, which is 1. If I hit the enter or return key, notice that it will take me over to the next cell, ready to enter the period, which in this case is 1.99. So I'm going to hit enter, and it did plot a point on the graph. You can't see it yet, but it's there. So I'm going to put in my next value for length, which is 2, and let's say that the length is 3.82 meters. Now, one of the things when I hit this, you'll notice that a line appears. That's connecting the two data points that I have entered, and we'll fix that later. One thing I did on purpose here was made a mistake. 1.99, if I look back, I realize it's actually 2.99. So how do I change that? Well, it's easy. Just click on the cell. It highlights. Type in 2.99, not 1.99. Hit enter. Now it takes me back to, if I were going to enter number 2 again, I don't have to do that. I just click on the cell below. And so I'm ready for my third data point, which creatively is 3. I hit enter, 3 meters, type in the period, 4.45 seconds, and proceed in this fashion until I've entered in all my data. Now this can go pretty fast if you have a data table already set up in your lab notes. The thing you want to do is just be careful that you get it entered accurately, although as we saw, it's pretty easy to go back and fix. Notice as I do this, the graph is being drawn, and you have some idea of what's going on. I would caution you not to read too much into what you see on the graph window, because if I wasn't putting them in the proper order, it would graph fine, but it would look funny. So for example, I'm going to switch up my last 2 points. I'm going to put in 11, skipping 10, and then I'm going to go back and go, oh, well, I missed that. I'm going to put in 10, and hit enter. Now, I don't know if you can see up in the corner, but it kind of doubled back on itself, and it can look pretty wild sometimes if the points are just randomly in there. At this point, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But now you see that I've got my data in the data table and I have a graph. A couple of things about the graph though. One is we have these lines that are connecting the points. We don't generally want that in an investigation because it implies that the points were perfectly precise, and of course they're not. So I want to get rid of those connecting lines, and so I'm going to double click anywhere in the graph window and bring up a dialog box for the graph options. Remember, if you want to change something on LoggerPro, double click on it. Right here it says connect points. I'm going to uncheck that. Now if I just left it at that, my graph would look like this, and you can see the points are there, but they're very hard to see. So while I'm in the graph options box, I'm going to also check point protectors. Now this is the place where I would also title the graph if I wanted it. So I'm going to go ahead and call it period versus length. If I can spell it right. So I just type that into the title dialog box and then say OK. And now you can see what's changed is instead of lines connecting the dots, I just have those dots, and now I see them because there's point protectors underneath them. I also have a period versus length title above it. Now, if I were done at this point, I would want to prepare this for printing. The graph is too big for most lab books, even though it may not look too big on your computer screen. It is. So if I go to the lower corner with my cursor, I see that it changes to a double arrow. If I click, oops, don't want to do that. I want to resize the whole window. Get that little box, it turns it to double arrows, and click it this way and drag it that way. And now I can see that it's about the right size. If I want to move it, I can grab it like this and move it around. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it there. Notice that this extreme data point is kind of half in, half out, and I really don't want it like that. So I'm going to move my cursor down to the axis of the graph. It'll turn to a squiggly line. If I click and drag that way, I can bring it in. I can also do that at the top, and there I have it. Now, at this point, I would look at that graph and try and make a determination on whether it was linear or not. It doesn't look linear to me. It looks like it's something else. But just to make sure, I'm going to click on this button right at the top that has a straight line and says linear fit. On a PC, there'll be a little subtitle below it that'll say R equals. If I click on that, I get LoggerPro will draw a line of best fit, and then this dialog box will have information about the slope and the intercept of that line of best fit, as well as this correlation number. Now the correlation number tells me how good the fit is, and I see that I've got a fit of 0.9888, but I also notice that it looks like there's a pattern there, so I don't think this is a linear graph. So I'm going to close that because we don't put linear fits on graphs that aren't linear. If it were linear though, I would be ready to print at this point. So I'll stop here, and we can look at the next video to see how to deal with a curve that's not linear.